Thank you, Anna. With that, we'll open the meeting since we do have a quorum. I'll just take a quick roll call. Casey Atkins present.
Paul Bohm present.
Jim Howard present.
Awesome. And Carlin Reed, thank you for joining us. And I did just want to give a special shout out to Mary Hartman. Congratulations on joining the select board and winning your election. Also, we're so thrilled to have you here with us as the select board liaison. We will be looking forward to your expertise, and also your experience with the finance committee will be very valuable as we tackle the next phase with the BD Center. So we're so glad to have you here. We are desperately going to miss Matt Johnson, who really just became part of the team and part of the family here. You'll have big shoes to fill, but I'm sure you will. So we're looking forward to it. And anytime you want to walk Ride Out or any of the other parks, we're happy to do it with you.
I walk it all the time.
Right,
I do.
Which one's your favorite then? Well, you don't have to say favorite. Which one is in your current rotation right now?
Well, we do Emerson. I did Emerson this morning, and I usually do Ride Out late afternoon. I didn't do today. I went to Simon Willard this afternoon, but between the trails and the parks, we get out at least twice a day.
Awesome. I love it. On the Ride Out circuit right now, I spent some time seeing the new playground at Emerson last week, which, Anna, it's incredible. Just so many kids out there playing, better accessibility with the poured rubber. The structures look great. I love how you were able to keep the original structures and really just add to what was already there. A great way to sort of keep what works and just add supplementally to it. So thank you. With that, I'm going to move us along to agenda item number 1, which is approval of these are the April 21 meeting minutes.
April 12th. Yeah, I made a typo. Sorry.
No, that's okay, Adam. April was a month of a lot of meeting minutes, and I really appreciate all that you do there. Okay, so we've got the April 12th meeting minutes, which were sent around. Jim or Paul, do you guys need to take another minute with the minutes, or are you ready to vote on them?
I'm ready.
Okay, Paul, do you want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure. I move to accept the minutes of, I'm sorry, the date is April what?
April 12th.
April 12th. Move to accept the minutes of April 12th as written.
Second. All right, roll call. Casey Atkins. Yes. Paul Bohm.
Yes.
Jim Howard.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, next up we have appointments. This is typically on here just to give a quick review to see where we are with our board membership, where everyone is in their term. I am in my second term. I need to re-up with the town clerk, it looks like.
Yep. So Paul and you are up for reappointment, which they have proceeded in starting. We're also looking to appoint a new member who might jump on tonight, but he's not officially part of the group yet. So Casey and Paul, you've been reappointed for a new term. You should be getting confirmation of that from Michael from the town manager's office shortly. Pete's term will end the month following town meeting next year. Jim, you're the year after, 2024. And the new potential member, his name is Phil Griffiths, and he's fantastic. So Phil, myself, Adam, and Casey had an opportunity to chat about a week ago about the Recreation Commission, and Phil's shown interest. He's a Concord resident now with a background in recreation-based public policy. Phil has worked for a variety of organizations, including the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the Boston Harbor Island Alliance, and the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. He's been in town for just over a year now with his wife and son over in the Thoreau School neighborhood. And he has ample experience with strategic planning and recreation initiatives, and is super excited to dig in and use those skills with the town of Concord if appointed by the town manager. Looks like he's going to jump in right now. Perfect timing. So I will wait for him to get his computer up and running here, and then we'll welcome him to introduce himself to you all as well. He's really fantastic.
He'll be modest, but he was the Undersecretary for Environmental Affairs under Deval Patrick. And hi, Phil. Just
Hi, my apologies. You'll note I'm not a candidate for the town IT commission.
No problem at all, Phil. I was just tooting your horn and sharing a little bit of information on what you've done for the region and your recent move to Concord. So putting you right on the spot here, Phil, before we give your intros, if you could just quickly introduce yourself to Phil, a little bit about when you joined the commission and a little bit about yourself. And then Phil, if you could share a little bit about yourself as well with the group. You're not an official commission member yet. We haven't had the final approval, but I know it's in the works.
Okay.
Paul, if you want to go first.
Yeah, hi, Phil. Welcome. Paul Baum, resident of Concord since 1976, when I didn't have any gray hair. I've had children and grandchildren through all the programs, and currently in the programs, I have a passion for keeping and maintaining and improving the facilities. And so the strategic planning effort that we are collectively going into is kind of near and dear to my heart, because I think that's going to help Anna and the department and the whole town in pulling together the various recreational pieces, which are the way we're structured as a town. They don't all sit in the same place. So perhaps we'll get a plan to kind of pull that together. So that's me. I've been on the Recreation Commission for a couple of years, and thanks for clarifying the reappointment, Anna, because I got a letter just today from Carrie LaFleur thanking me for agreeing to accept reappointment.
Surprise!
Surprise! I didn't know where that came from. Now, so you headed that one off. I didn't have to ask that question. Thanks.
You're stuck with us.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Paul. Jim, you want to go?
Oh, hey, Phil, welcome. Nice to see you again. Jim Howard. So I've been on the commission about, I think, a little under a year now. So this is my first kind of experience with town government. So it's been a great learning experience for me. I have two younger kids that participate in a lot of the rec commission or town recreation activities and programs, and it's been great having them participate. And so it's been also good to kind of be a part of this commission, to kind of see what's going on behind the curtain, and to meet everyone and be a part of it. So that's it, I guess. Again, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Casey.
Phil, I think you know me too well at this point, since I'm the one who tracked you down and put my claws into you to get you on the commission. We're very Thoreau heavy here, I think, on the commission, but we keep our perspectives open. I've been on the commission since, I think, 2017. Is that right, Anna, or was it 2016? It was right.
I started July of 16, and you were on it. So,
So 2016. And I am born and raised in Concord and came back to raise my family, and excited to get into this new phase of the strategic plan. Paul was keeping a low profile on that. He's really been spearheading the strategic plan. And I think this is a good dovetail into our next agenda item, which is an update on the CPC strategic planning funding. So I will pivot over.
I just want to mention one other relevant credential, Philip. My background, I am an environmental consultant. Been doing that since 1976. Still practicing on many matters, including Superfund matters, which links me to the site about half a mile behind me, which I envision someday to have great playing fields as part of the recreation activity.
Sounds great.
Phil, you want to just give a little background and intro of yourself to the crew? I gave them a little bit, but I know you have more and better.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've had a long career both in the public sector and in the nonprofit sector on environmental issues generally, and with my biggest passion of that being parks and parks advocacy and outdoor education, outdoor adventure, all that sort of thing. I started my career in the public sector. I worked in city government many, many years ago. I didn't even forgot to tell you that one, but that was in a different city in a different time in Cambridge. But I spent most of my career in Massachusetts state government. Started with the Department of Environmental Protection. So Paul, you and I probably have a lot of things to chat about going back through there. Served many roles there. Most interesting one that from my perspective that I think ties into got me involved in a lot of other things. I used to run their geographic information systems program. So looking at mapping and looking at how you can use data to figure out various things for outdoor activities, environmental work. Spent a lot of years at DEP. I went to the Secretary's office wore various hats, but I oversaw all of the environmental agencies for the Commonwealth under the Patrick administration as the Undersecretary for the Environment. So the DEP and the DCR and Fish and Game, Department of Agriculture, Coastal Zone Management, all of the land grants, all of the Parks and Recreation grants, that was all in my portfolio at EEA. So I'm intimately familiar with all of the state land and park grant functions. And then I left state service about 10 years ago to go work for a nonprofit organization that was a partner with the National Park Service and the Massachusetts DCR, helping run the Boston Harbor Islands National and State Park, where I did lots of things about bringing recreational activities, bringing kids to the park, building recreational facilities, all that sort of thing. And then I left that nonprofit role and went back to work in state service in the state of New York for the State Parks Agency, where I was building capital projects in parks and expanding new recreational facilities for new audiences and creative parking and creative programming in the parks. And we were doing things like building trails designed for autistic kids, repurposing historic buildings, taking old boatyards and turning them into canoe launching places, things like that. So my passion is building parks and recreational facilities, getting kids there to play in them and use them, and making them ongoing working things through, a partnership between public and private agencies, which I think is a very exciting goal. It does great things for great people, more so than ever in the last couple of years of the pandemic. We've realized how important these facilities are. So I'm thrilled to be able to join my new hometown and thinking about what we need to do and who we're doing it for and what kinds of things we want to do for them and help plan for it, and then figure out creative new ways to execute things to get people to use all those facilities. And I'm looking forward to meeting all of you in person someday and jumping in.
Oh, thanks so much, Phil. I literally can't help but smile when you start talking about all that stuff. It just, thank you for choosing us. This is going to be fantastic collaboration, and we're really excited to have your leadership and guidance join this commission. So thank you. Thank you. Great. So that leads us to our first point of discussion tonight, the CPC application for funds to update our recreation facilities strategic plan. That document Adam sent out to everybody this afternoon, our initial draft proposal. And I was hoping that we could spend a little bit of time talking about that proposal, work out some more kinks. It's not something that we need to rush and finalize tonight. I certainly want to throw it by other groups as well before we, put it out to official bid, but just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with, how it's reading, the project scopes, things like that. Paul, I know that you had emailed with some feedback. If you want to kick off the conversation, we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I don't want to go into great detail, but let me just share the screen. I'll go through very quickly.
Great.
Is that okay?
Great. Yeah, thank you.
If I could find it on this screen, let me see.
Should be the little arrow next to the share screen word.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the document though.
Oh, there you go.
Just a second.
This is the similar draft, you guys, that I had sent around for the last two meetings as well. So just as a reference, this is the document we've been working off of.
Yeah, I have to close a couple of things, and if I can't get this straight in 2 seconds. Let me go through. I have it on my screen and something's up here. I think what you have is really an improvement over the last version. I think it's almost there. I just had a couple of comments And I think there may be just editorial at the beginning. I think in the background, when you talk about that the consultant should come up with a plan for, and you had maintenance and reconstruction. I added an expansion of existing and new. So I think the theme of existing and new, because we want the consultant not only to look for improving the existing facilities, but to, with input from many town stakeholders, and that's an important task. The new part of it's really important. What's missing? What needs to happen? There's a paragraph that I didn't understand on page 2. If you have, maybe you want to open that if I can't.
Sure, let me share my screen here. Can you see that?
Oh, those are my, that's great. So I didn't, the bolded, the highlighted paragraph, I didn't understand what you were saying there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to make it bigger for you guys, sorry. There we go. So we had talked over the course of the last couple of meetings with, at some point we have to try and narrow down what resources are included in this plan in the detail that we're hoping for. For instance, we talked about not including the school's indoor outdoor facilities, because again, we do have to place a cap at some point. So this piece, I thought we should discuss, and thanks for highlighting it, Paul. You know, when you look at the town of Concord, we are not a parks and recreation department. We are just recreation. So the handful of parks that are, you know, the ones that Mary refers to in her walks each day, things like that, those are a collaborative responsibility between recreation, public works, and facilities. The other piece of the properties that are, you know, very plentiful in Concord are conservation spaces and the trails and the access points that are managed by public works and or the planning department. And so I thought we might want to put in here somehow that as a community, we want to listen for the feedback related to up to 10 or 20 additional properties outside of those that are listed above, which is this section here. So right now we're really identifying parks and fields, playgrounds, and other town properties or lands that might be suitable for recreation. But we may also want to look at fairyland, or we may want to look at, Paul, I know you've talked about the boat launches, and just want to try and define in here some place with the sites or the quantity of sites that we might want to do that deeper dive on. So that was the intention of that statement.
Yeah, I'm not sure you need that. If, you know, the focus maybe will come out during the process, but I'm not, it was just a little confusing to me what a consultant reading this, how they interpret it. That I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure it's needed, but it's fine to leave it in there. I do have a question on the schools and the playing fields. So I understand completely that at some point you have to kind of segregate activities, and certainly the gymnasiums are an indoor part of that. But to the extent that the outdoor playing fields, I'm thinking about Ripley, I'm thinking about the high school field, are really important for recreational activities around the town, some of which involve recreation department use of that. I'm just wondering why we would not think about some of the school outdoor playing fields in here.
Again, you know, I think, and anybody can chime in if you have an opinion, but, you know, we recognize that the municipality is kind of, you know, two main facets. So we have our municipal recreation, and then we have our school recreation. The recreation department, we do schedule the turf fields and the upper grass field, and we schedule the baseball property at Ripley. But other than that, we don't have any involvement in scheduling, maintaining, coordinating any use of the other fields. So if we were to try and keep it so we as a recreation department, you know, we're included in some of that property use, the middle schools, the elementary schools, those spaces we aren't part of. So
Yeah,
that was
and that-
the framework for it.
That's why I mentioned Ripley and the high
Yeah.
school bill in
Mhm.
particular. So I don't know whether you want to put an asterisk there or just kind of leave it as it is. So,
Mhm.
but there was kind of an overlap.
Paul, if I can for a minute, I do think, and maybe this is my original vision for this, was to be expansive. And the school properties, and this is probably a conversation that is above my pay grade, but the school properties, whether they're gymnasiums, auditoriums, or fields, some of them, the greater town certainly has access to. Anna's point in terms of the specific jurisdiction of the recreation department is limited. And part of that is how the recreation department is currently scoped within the town, which may or may not be that way in the next 10 years. Many towns have parks and rec. I don't know, Anna, and this would be helpful to find out how towns that are set up with a parks and rec, how they interface with the school districts in terms of those assets, because I think that the schools have some of the best recreational assets, and some of the conversations around a new middle school building, things like that, have to do with how some of these can become more accessible to the town. So I think there's two separate things. One is, Anna, you have to operate within the scope that you're currently in. So that's fair there. The separate thing is, what as a commission who should we be having conversations with, and how should we be starting those conversations so that it's not, we don't want folks to respond defensively. We want this to be ideally a real collective and collaborative approach to look at, our town has a lot of recreational assets. How do we catalog them? Because oftentimes part of the impetus of this is when opportunities come before the town, whether it's a new school building or a property that can be purchased by the town has recreational opportunities for it, we're looked to say, well, would you be able to use this? And the answer is yes, we could always use more recreational assets, but where does it fit within the town's overall goals and what we have altogether, which we've never been able to catalog. So that was my long-winded way of saying, I would love to have a more expansive view of what those assets are. But Anna, you're limited in terms of what you can actually scope out for before someone says you're out of your lane here. So
Right.
Are there conversations that can be started by the rest of us?
Let me, so this whole process, there's a healthy tension. So Jim, I'm also the Recreation Commission's representative on the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee. When we reviewed the application here, the CPC was quite excited of the expansive nature of this plan. I think the terms were holistic, et cetera. That Anna, in envisioning this plan, you weren't limited to things under your purview. That by design, you were tiptoeing into other departments, and very explicitly in this plan and in the application, we were collaborating with those other plans. Because I think about task 2 here involved getting public input. I don't want to tell the public, well, don't think about the playing fields. They're getting open-ended input from the public. I want them to think about all recreational assets in town, and then working with the consultant now, you can kind of pare it down. But I think so. I agree with Casey. I think I don't want this to read like, hey, the recreation department is taking over, but also I want it to read like an expansive, holistic plan. I will mention one other thing related to this. In discussions with Delia recently, she was saying that she plans to submit an application to the CPC to update her open space and recreation plan, which had me scratching my head a little bit. So I don't know, you probably need to have some conversations across departments, because I think the collaboration at one plan and maybe had different pieces, maybe that's too ambitious. But I think in scoping this out, to follow up on Casey's comment, I think we were thinking big.
Yeah, and the open space and recreation plan is different. Matt Johnson had a question about that today too. It's different than what this scope of project would be able to cover. And Phil, you're probably very familiar with open space recreation plans, but you know, what we, again, having to pare this down, being that we have $75,000, this will not include things like an environmental inventory or, you know, vegetation and geological surveys and things to that nature, which is what the open space recreation plan also includes. So Delia's interest in doing that, I'll certainly, thanks for that heads up, Paul, I'll definitely reach out to her and make her aware again of this project and how it could relate. But that plan and that document is different than what this scope would be. But I think it's really important to cross-reference amongst the plans that are already created or will be created to make sure, again, that people can pick up one document and know what these other resources are, who's in charge of them, you know, when the plan is to update them, things of that nature. And I agree. I think, you know, when we sit down with the public, whether it be through surveys or Zooms or in-person intake, you know, informational meetings, I'm hoping that they do bring up school-related facilities and natural resources related facilities and recreation and public works related facilities, you know, and from there we can work with that consultant within the scope that we're able to, you know, to identify and outline those things in a plan. So I certainly can add, you know, some sort of asterisks of, you know, a deep dive on facilities that the recreation department does oversee or support or collaborate versus, you know, access to indoor facilities and things of that nature. But Ripley, the turf fields, the upper grass field, I think that's worth an asterisk, Paul, for sure.
Okay.
Can I make one thought, Anna, from a member of the public, since I'm not
Great.
wearing my hat as a commissioner, just as a way to think about doing those two things, since you've got a limited budget and you can't have them recreate everything and look at everything, you may want to think about sort of asking them in their proposals to you, right? You're going to get proposals from a bunch of consultants to say, you need to, you know, we need to know that you are aware. They love to do their homework, right? Get them to do their literature search. You want to ask them, how can this plan best build upon the existing open space and recreation plan? How can this build upon the school's capital plan for facilities? How can this build upon existing conservation plans? So they're going to need to go out and have a look at all of those existing plans that you've got so far, for better or worse, and say, here's where we think you need to, here's what baseline that gives us as consultants to go into doing this project for you, and how do we propose to do it to build upon that in the best way. So you give them a little room to kind of let them baseline it, make them do their homework for you, because you also want to acknowledge that those other ones exist and come up front and say, we're not redoing all, we're not recreating the wheel, but put it on the consultant to read those things, understand where they are, what that baseline gives you. And they may come up with a couple of things that say, hey, the really clear thing is here, when we're done with this work, the next step is going to be to compare this to your school's capital plan or X. So they have the next thing to move forward. Consultants love to do their homework, and they love to pitch the next piece of work to you while they're doing it. But take advantage of that, right? Say, if this is our baseline with these other things, here's the next piece that we need to do. Here's how it fits into that bigger picture. And the next step will be looking at how do we integrate it with these other plans, but get them to do a little homework and propose the way they might do that.
Great. Thanks for that feedback, Phil. That makes total sense.
Anna, can I make a comment?
Please.
Are you okay with me, even though I'm not a member of the committee?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
The town of Concord adopted last year a capital planning process. So we do have a process that all of the requests that you come up with will be integrated into requests from the school and from the town. So, you know, that will happen eventually. But I have a comment. I really like one of the things I'm learning in my few weeks here as being the select board member is that Concord's run by a lot of silos. So I'm hearing that and I'm seeing that. So I really like the fact that you're looking at it more expansively. I think erring on that side would be better than staying within your lane, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then I've got a final question. When I read this plan, I look at it as you're looking at assets and refreshing assets or expanding assets. Is there any time that you do an actual operational strategic plan, looking at how operationally you could be changing things, how you could be making more efficient? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Is that part of this, or is that some other process that takes care of that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mary. Thanks for that. And right now, that is not part of this. We aren't digging into the operational pieces. I think that certainly warrants evaluation and consideration, whether it's a supplement to this plan, maybe in future years. I think in my time in Concord and working with the handful of departments that I do in a variety of different ways, it's very clear that there is some confusion or crossover, I should say, in what we all do. And it's not really clear who's the final person for X, Y, or Z, or where do you go to permit X, Y, or Z. So it's certainly, I think if we can get this facilities strategic plan tightened up and created and available for people, then it might naturally lead to an operations plan, especially once we look at the capital recommendations that the plan might bring forward. If we're seeing that it's a mixture of different departments and, funds would need to come from this department or that department, I think that's a great point and a future opportunity really for our department and potentially others to come together on.
Okay.
And I think also, just Mary, for you to be aware of, since Anna's taken over, just organically, operationally, there's been a lot of tweaking and revamping since she's taken the helm. So both internally from the things that, may not fully rise to the level of the commission, but also to some degree, Anna, you and I, well, I guess I took over as chair maybe a season or two before you came on as director. We started with revising and updating our administrative code. And Paul was instrumental in providing a ton of feedback on that, as well as a couple of our former board members who work with administrative codes. And the other thing we've done is try to get a process in place for the requests that we do have. Typically they're from, like a Concord Carlisle youth baseball and softball. Yeah, I'll just give that as a big example.
Yeah, I watched that.
Right, but folks who want to, public-private partnerships where they're looking to improve the facilities, and we're looking at, do we need it, how we go through a process. It hasn't always been clear. And Anna, to her credit, has basically said, to some degree, fine, I'll take the reins, take the responsibility and the liability, even though it's not something that's totally tasked to her in terms of what the org chart looks like in town.
Okay.
So, those pieces are in place. And this is where, Matt was really so wonderfully helpful and a great guide in that process to help plod that out. And, as things have changed with some of the overhaul in leadership within the town governance. So
I know.
There's a great opportunity here to take stock, and that's where we are. And I do want to just sort of get back to an initial question, because there's only so much, Anna, that you can do interdepartmentally, that there are conversations that I should be having as chair. Paul, with me in that regard, since he's really heading up the strategic plan with the other chairs and, other folks on the other commissions or committees that are relevant, whether it's to public works, whether it's to planning or natural resources, etc. Sorry, I have a naughty dog here. To facilitate some conversation and collaboration with this. So I'd be open, Anna, if you have thoughts, or if there's just sort of an agreement that Paul and I should start reaching out to folks to, once we have this, to say, this is what the larger vision is. And we'd love your buy-in and feedback, and, start those conversations. So it's not like a formal proceeding, Paul, it sort of starts with a casual conversation to get people on board.
Yeah, I think that'll be great to do, Casey. And when we submitted our application to CPC, we did have a letter of support from the Natural Resources Commission and a letter of support from the Public Works Commission. I did want to make sure that they were aware of this, since there is going to be natural overlap. We don't want anybody to feel like anyone's toes are getting stepped on. And I think if you spoke with anybody from Public Works or Natural Resources, they too would appreciate the opportunity to come together in this way. So I think as soon as this document is in its final form and ready for sharing, that it is never too soon to start, sharing it with those groups, with those department directors, to make sure that this is coming down the pipeline. And one of the factors in here that we include is that the consultant would be meeting with those commissions and committees to get their feedback. Everybody has valuable perspectives. It might not be, what sort of user groups are on those fields or on those courts like we might have. It might be, the turf management or, the infrastructure required to keep the fields watered and fertilized appropriately, things like that. So it's on one of these pages, that we would ask them to meet.
Let me just pick up on
secretaries.
something that Phil mentioned before. So Phil has obviously worked with consultants, and I am a consultant. When the consultant should throw some ideas our way, they're going to read this, they're going to say, whoa, there's a lot going on here. And we want them to propose something that they think is achievable. And out of that, maybe how the Recreation Commission can help them. I'm sure it will, Casey. But I'd almost at this point like to see what the consultants say of how to do this work and how we can assist them. And I'm sure some of that's going to come out of it. But let's lean on them a little bit for some ideas. I just want to pick up on Mary, on the organizational part. So I think part of this whole strategic planning effort was a little bit out of the box thinking. And, as much as we can stay there without getting too much trouble, I would like to. I think perhaps out of this effort will come some ideas or some thinking, maybe on the part of the select board, how to optimize.
Yes.
Of course, the town, the way we're structured right now, it is what it is. We have recreation, we have parks, we have NRC. There may be better ways down the road to optimize how this is organized and managed. Maybe not. So, but part of this expansive nature of this plan was to a little bit get thinking along those lines. How do we do this all? How do we
Paul, I think that's a
collaborate?
great idea. I think you should think about, and Anna, you should think about whether there's a way to make that an explicit part of the consultant report. Is what does this mean for the next step? That kind of recommendation to a town select board or whatever the right body is, to say, what we learned in studying all this is you've got, pay compliments to where the work is done well within each one of the silos, but have them tell us this is the opportunity you're missing, so that the town, the select board can look at that and say, yeah, we really are missing the boat here, and give them some advice on how to potentially look at that in the future. I think I apologize, I haven't read the whole thing, so it may be in there already, but making that explicit and get them to really think about that would be useful.
You could just add that quickly to a deliverable, or include ideas for however you want to term it.
Town. I'll reword this better, but this will be my note.
And the rest of these are edits in here. I did have one thing. I think you talked about the consultant having ideas. You used the word construction somewhere.
Say that again.
If you can scroll up a little bit, keep going. Yeah, right here. Scope of services is, I just add this phrase, but then establish clearly defined, realistic, and methodological strategy for the evaluation and prioritization. I cross out construction because I think that may get them in a different direction, because it's really how to evaluate and prioritize either improvements or new initiatives. I took the construction word out of that. I thought it was a little bit beyond the scope of what we wanted to do.
How do you feel about these parts below?
Oh, I think if they conceive a project, I think we want them to come up with some ideas what that's going to cost, but that's not construction.
Okay.
It's sort of sure. We want those capital ideas, capital project ideas, to Mary's point, to have a plan that proposes some things without thinking about what it's going to cost in general, I think is not a good idea. So that's good to have those in there.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments? I'll just scroll down so people generally can look at these sections quickly. So the kickoff meetings and then outreach meetings within various departments, commissions, committees.
Can
One
you
thing.
Can you
Sorry.
change Board of Selectmen to Select Board? It's a nit.
Well, that's embarrassing that I had that incorrect.
Thank you.
Putting you to work, day one, Mary.
And the Conservation Commission is the NRC, I presume?
Yes.
What's okay? So you have that as Natural Resource Department as well, so.
Yeah, different groups, public works. The
Yeah,
other
one
part
of the-
down here I wanted to consider is what is a reasonable goal for response? And I don't have enough expertise to know what is realistic or what isn't. One of the big pieces that we all agreed on when reviewing the 2014 recreation facilities strategic plan was that it didn't seem like it truly reached the community. I wasn't here when it was created, but it was my understanding that a survey went out. There was about a 2-week response opportunity, and that was it. And we don't want to do that. We want to be much more thorough. We want to make sure we're reaching all nooks and crannies of this town. And to do that, we want in-person meetings. We want those in-person meetings to have interpreters and sign language available. We want to make sure that Zoom meetings have as much access as possible. And we want to make sure that, we are still sending out those online surveys for folks. So does anybody have an idea is 30% of household response reasonable? Is that like totally shooting for the stars?
I think putting something ambitious for the consultant there. Remember, one of the deliverables is for them to come up with a stakeholder engagement plan, however, in the deliverables. And so I think we should let them know that we want inputs from a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to put a number there? No, but.
Yeah, I don't think we have to do anything. I just wanted to be, I don't know. I'm a type A.
Putting a goal to it, especially if it's ambitious, Paul, because the difference between now and 2014 is an entire world of difference. There's more robust email lists. There's more robust ways of connecting with people. BD Center has got a better email list. Concord Rec has a better Facebook game. There's a lot of other things at play. And I would look at, our town alert systems that they have. The school district may be able to send something out. The PTG, there are a lot of other avenues, more sort of robust avenues than there were in 2014. So I don't mind putting it to them for.
Yeah, I think having a stretch goal in there is fine. We're not gonna not pay them if they only hit 20%, but
Right. Okay. So that I just wasn't sure of. I picked that number and wasn't sure if it was realistic or not.
I don't even know how many households there are. Mary, do you know how many households there are in Concord?
6,400.
6,400 households.
Yeah, households, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 2,000 households.
I mean, we have that in BD Center memberships alone, 2,000. So between that and our after-school programs, we can hit a large quantity of those households, whether they respond or not. But again, maybe sending out the surveys via front desk at the BD Center, sending it out via after-school registration, summer camp registrations. Maybe it is reasonable to think we could get.
Yeah, well, that's why I think we talk later about having meetings, surveys, the number of ways of getting that input. We might get 10% of people coming to meetings, but 20. So it's a composite. It's not just the survey. So sort of it's all those modes.
Okay.
But it's up to the consultant to, I think, design that stakeholder engagement plan. I think the methodologies to achieve the goals.
Yep.
I'd like to see what they come up with.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. So this next section just talks about those deliverables. So getting the biweekly updates, the engagement plan, summarized needs assessments, various drafts and presentations. I will add in some town restructuring evaluation or, considerations. I skipped a section here. The conceptual improvement plans with base plans, site visits, etc. Final 10-year capital plan. And then the rest of this is timetables. I am optimistic, that something like this could be established well by the end of this upcoming fiscal year, but I also want to be flexible. One of the pieces too with the other recreation facility strategic plan was it was clear that it was, a quick 1-year project because it really, the pictures and the wording and stuff suggests they did it when it was winter. You couldn't see some of the spaces in the spring. So, and the pictures that were shown of the spring seasons were old. So I'm wondering if we want to consider that and make sure that the consultant does have the opportunity to see these spaces during the seasons. And if we're asking them to create a document by, spring, summer 23, we might be squeezing them again, but anybody have thoughts on that?
I feel like if this is the money to hire a consultant, we do this about once every 10 years, being flexible in the time frame so that we're getting a better scope and that it's not being rushed, I think would be beneficial rather than rushing it. And frankly, what we had from 2014 is something that was a little bit lackluster to last a full 10 years. Granted, a lot happened in that 10 years, but I think if this is just a matter of expanding it out 4 months or so, 4 to 6 months, then having some of that wiggle room makes it more valuable in the end.
Yeah.
Worth the money, frankly.
I think at least you should have sort of 1 year from contract award. I don't know if you've gotten the CPC thumbs up yet. I know the documents are being prepared, the MOUs. Have you gotten a letter from Heather yet?
Yes,
Okay.
we received that. But we can't kick this off until at least July 1. So even from there.
So contract award, it's probably, a year from contract award, I think is reasonable.
Okay.
And, consultants will, if they don't think they can get it done, if they're 8 months into it, they need an extension, they'll come back and ask you for it.
Okay. So I will just make updates on those dates throughout here. It does define, what the budget is. So we're not getting astronomically higher proposals. And then this is all pieces, having to deal with the finance department and their guidance. So, so what I'll do, you guys, is watch the video again, make some updates to this document, send it out. Would love to review it again, with more of a final blessing from this group and hopefully from some other groups at our June meeting. And then we'll be able to start talking with the finance department about posting it. So thank you for your valuable input and feedback on that.
Can I ask you one last question, Anna?
Sure.
Do you have a targeted list of consultants that this is going out to?
I do not have that off the top of my head. I did gather when we started talking about this strategic planning documents from at least a dozen other communities. So I would compile those names and reach out to the teams that created plans that were similar of the scope that we're looking for.
Okay, that's a good approach. Thanks.
Great.
Anna, thank you for this. And Paul, thank you so much for the work that you've done on this. I know you really have pulled the lion's share. So much appreciation for that. And Phil, when exactly do you get sworn in so that we can put you to work?
It's a mystery. I haven't heard from the manager's office, so it's not in my hands.
Yeah, he hasn't heard. So I reached out to them again today. And Michael was going to talk with Carrie. Carrie was hopeful she'd be able to get it ready for tonight. So she's aware that we want him yesterday. I will continue to follow up with them.
A couple of other things on her plate. So
yes, exactly.
I would like to recommend, Phil, if you're okay with it, and Paul, to add Phil to Paul and Pete on the then we've got a quorum issue.
Mhm.
Oh, the subgroup.
Yes. Let's have a chat with Pete, maybe. Paul, what do you think?
Well, I'm just thinking the purpose of the subgroup initially was to kind of get thoughts to the RFP. Once the RFP is finalized with the whole commission's blessing, then we get into what do we do next? Do we need a subcommittee, or is it the outreach assist, Casey, that you talked about before? I don't know what the subcommittee would do next. Adam and Anna, are we done with that initial effort and we're moving into something else?
I would see a subcommittee working closely with the consultant, Paul, and being the commission's touchstones for it. Anna can't do all of it herself because she's got to keep the ship sailing at the same time, and there's plenty of data she'll have to supply them. And given the collective experience that you and Phil have, and I want Pete to be read in, but I would want to chat with Pete about where he is on all this. But I think it would be helpful short term while we're getting this ready for a final vote to approve to go out for an RFP. I would love to make sure that, Paul, both you and Phil have your eyes on it. And if the two of you have an opportunity to chat offline to bounce ideas, that would be great. And we can loop in Pete as appropriate and allowed by open meeting law. And then further, we'll have a conversation about what that subcommittee would transfer into, the work that it would entail and what it looks like. And then we can have a conversation about who sits on that. And then, how the rest of us on the commission will interface with it, frankly.
Yeah, great idea. I got it.
Okay.
I'd love to see, once we get everything rolling, if we did have a small subcommittee, if somebody could always be at some of these, the larger public meetings, of course, we will all be there, me, of course. But, the smaller commission meetings or opportunities to speak at the Rotary Club or anything like that, it would be nice if we did have a rec commission representative available that could go, and maybe that committee could help, fill that as well. Food for thought for sure. Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. That was a good long discussion. I really appreciate it. So Casey, we can move on to next part of the agenda. We're at 8 o'clock, so we have about an hour.
Department updates, BD Center, budget.
Me again, actually. So the FY23 budget was approved for the BD Center, and I want to be very transparent in every meeting that we have and every conversation that we have about the current position of the BD Center. So again, the budget did pass, but as we all know, the BD Center has been losing $500,000 a year for the last 2 years, and we anticipate that happening again in FY23. And, as an account that is required to have at least 6 months of operation within the reserve funds, it currently does have that. We have about a year and a half's worth saved up. We do, though, need to be frank about the BD Center's financial future. And, by FY26, there needs to be a larger conversation about the BD Center and its ability to sustain, or, what sorts of initiatives we need to take to make sure that can happen. So I just want to leave that, BD Center budget as a standing piece on our agendas moving forward. Some pieces that I'm diving into most immediately include the deferred maintenance plans. So when the BD Center was constructed 16 years ago, funds were not raised for its maintenance. And, the first 10 years, the building operated well. The systems that were in place didn't need replacing, so they weren't, even though they might have been on the depreciation schedules. And we are seeing the effects of that now. So 16 years later, many of the large systems are requiring replacement. They're extremely cost prohibitive. And we, over the years, have put money aside for the depreciation, but those funds haven't necessarily always been used to replace systems because those systems were running okay at the time. So here we are, and we're working really, really closely with the facilities team. I anticipate working closely with the finance department, the finance committee, and Mary, that's where I'm really excited to have you join as a select board liaison, but also a finance committee guru, to explore what we need to do. It might be time to start exploring a different sort of fund. The BD Center is an enterprise fund. Potentially there's other opportunities that would be less prohibitive and potentially less dependent on general fund transfers at the level at which the BD Center currently does or will be, supporting the general fund. So it's just time to start thinking in that mindset with the BD Center. We're looking at an uphill climb here. The team internally is aware of that. I think it's important in leadership to be transparent with all of our team at different levels, and they are. Nobody is scared right now. We're not in this, everyone's jumping off the island or anything to that nature. And we are really optimistic that the team we have in place is capable and ready to take this on. So I want to make sure that that's on the record. Everybody is looking forward to this challenge. We wish we weren't having to, but we're ready for it. The numbers that we're seeing in FY22 reflect that. So right now, if our projections are correct, we are expecting to exceed our revenue goals by almost $500,000 this year. The team has worked tirelessly to expand programs, bring in new rentals, run things internally, fix things internally, and the fruits of that labor is showing. Our expenses we're expecting to be right about on par with what we projected for FY22 revised numbers. So those things combined, we should have a healthy FY22. Granted, we were projecting to lose about $500,000. So again, we're not out of the water by just exceeding what our revenue goals are, but it's a trend in the right direction. We've made it out of what we believe to be the worst of the pandemic financially. Knock on wood, all of you right now. But our membership numbers are very reassuring. We're seeing the highest membership numbers in various categories that we've seen in a handful of years, and some points higher numbers than pre-pandemic.
Right.
So we're optimistic. Our team is working extremely hard. Staffing continues to be an issue, full-time and part-time staffing. So we're, coming at this from a variety of different angles and struggles, but plan on having this conversation each month with, things that I'm spending my time doing. Adam has taken on a ton of work at the BD Center for us. So grateful to have a really strong assistant director join our team this fall. Right now, we're down our aquatics program manager. It's a full-time position, and Adam is now taking that on. So he's doing 2 full-time jobs while I'm doing my job in the BD Center general manager's job. So we have a really good team in place. We're streamlining, if any of you know me, streamlining procedures and policies and systems. That's really my game, and Adam's as well. So just want to make sure everyone's aware of all that.
And I can point out from the historic perspective that I bring, just the difference it's made since you've taken the reins in both of those positions. I do, for purposes of our meetings, want to move the BD budget out of department updates and make it its own agenda item. And I think that it would be helpful, and rather than just calling it the BD budget, but BD future or BD update or something that speaks to the big task we have ahead of us, right? Mm-hmm. And I know previously for years we've tried to figure out how to best summarize where BD is at any point in time for the commission. And I would love if you and Adam could come up with like a short, pithy structure that could be included in each of our meetings to give a snapshot on membership, revenue, something that gives us the taste of where the trends are going, but keeps it in a bite-sized portion, if that makes sense, but helps give a snapshot there. And then, I know there's nothing worse than a chair who loves to create a bunch of subcommittees, but I do think that we need to, take the reins on this, create a group of us that are going to be reaching out and working closely with you, Anna, rather than just in conversations each month, to talk about where we need to go next, what we need to be exploring, how we need to get creative. And rather than just sort of kicking the can until we have a hard but necessary decision to make on behalf of the town.
Let me
Mary.
just add, the select board voted our goals for the year last Monday or the month recently. And the BD Center was one of our goals under fiscal sustainability. And what we specifically were looking for was both a capital and an operational plan for, I think it was 10 years. So, I didn't want to, we're talking about it now. So that's something that we really want to be able to take a look at for the very reasons that you articulated, Anna, as far as, we've got what, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So let's start looking at it now. So specifically it was capital and operating 5 to 10 years out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mary, and I'll probably reach out to you offline. I'll go back and
Yep.
I wasn't aware of that for the select board. So that's really great and
Yeah.
shows, the collaboration and required support that we're going to need from not just this little commission, but finance and select board. So that's great. I'll reach out to you and work with you to figure out exactly how you guys want that information over these next couple of years. And
Great.
yes, Casey, I think that's great. We don't have time to waste. So if anybody is interested in having more frequent conversations with me off the commission hour of BD stuff, I'd be happy to engage in those
So I think
conversations.
first I'll put it to the commission members about creating a subcommittee to focus on this more intently. Number one, because we need a vote to create it, and then if we're able to populate it this meeting, I think that would be helpful. I know Pete has been particularly invested in BD as well. So first, I just want to open it up to conversation amongst members. I'll say members and Phil for right now. And Carlin, also, if you have thoughts, I'd love to get your perspective, because you do a great job of keeping the pulse of what's going on in town. And you don't have to comment, but your comments are always much appreciated.
Okay, now's good.
Sure.
Okay, Carlin, read it.
I just get the commissioners to speak first, and then I'd love to get your thoughts. Sorry to pull you and then feedback.
Fire away.
Before I weigh in on the subcommittee, I have a really dumb question. Is the operational goal of BD anything other than to break even?
Great question.
It's
Go ahead, Mary.
it's to break even, right? But
Yes.
out of that breaking even,
That's our-
it's including putting aside enough money to do all the maintenance and the refresh of your assets.
Well, that's part of it. Yes, revenues equal expenses.
Yeah, well,
expenses.
accounting wise, it's more than just cover your expenses. It's put some aside in reserves so that you can refresh your assets.
Revenues equal expenses plus reserves.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
So that's a clear goal. I mean, I guess I've always assumed that's the goal, but
Yep, that's and pay the towns. And as Anna mentioned before, we also usually enterprise funds pay the town some money for some of the services like finance, HR, IT. It's an overhead goal. So that's something.
Well, but that's kind of a different thing. That's so you're including that. So general fund transfer is part of the equation. Will that always be part of the equation?
Well, it's part of doing business. If an enterprise fund is thought of as a business, and so it doesn't rely on property taxes. What it relies upon is the ratepayers, and that includes all the costs of doing business. Refreshing your assets, paying your employees, and paying for the services that you get from outside. Whether it's vendor services that you get for somebody coming in and doing something as a vendor, or a service that you get from the town administration.
And is that general fund transfer, is that a known percentage, or that varies from year to year in my experience?
It does. Yeah, and that's negotiable. I mean, obviously, I think we've been hasn't the town been I don't know, and I haven't been
Yeah.
looking at, they've been
Pandemic.
waiving that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, they waived it, right.
It had really fluctuated pretty significantly. I think on average, it was around 70,000 a year, Anna, and then it went up to 120,000. So all of these pieces, the general fund transfer is going to be a big conversation to get through. So, you know, general fund, if it stays an enterprise fund, maybe there is a better fund fit for the beauty center, perhaps. I think this is sort of, everything's got to be on the table. But if the general fund transfers obviously need to continue, then what is the formula behind it so that it can be something that's anticipated in the budgeting process?
I did do a little bit of research, and it was set up as an enterprise fund. So when we accepted the donations to build it, and when we put in, it was set up legally as an enterprise fund. If we just, and again, we can have this conversation going down the road, but enterprise, relaxing that, which might be tricky, wouldn't really solve the problem. Then all it does is it means that, well, now it's being subsidized by property taxes, which is not something that it was ever intended to do. So, but we can talk about it.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
there's
I'm so glad. Thank you for. I'm thank you so much for what you've done as far as to get FY22 to look like it's going to break even. That's really miraculous. So
Well,
that is.
talk to me in a month once we see those final numbers, but
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the best news I've heard today.
oh,
Again, a real testament to Anna and Adam and their collaboration, their teamwork at RAC.
Yeah, really, that's great.
we're
Any
very
other
optimistic.
thoughts you have before we pass it over to Jim?
No, that's, well, I think we definitely need a focused couple of people staying on top of this, in addition to the regular agenda item with the commission. So I'd be in favor of it. Although there are not that many of us to form that many subcommittees, I'd be in favor of that in general.
I know, I'm always nervous about too many subcommittees. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, it sounds like it's something that's a pressing need for the town and for the commission, so I'm for it.
And Phil, what are your thoughts? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I need to read into it a little bit more. Certainly, I think your idea of a regular agenda item makes a lot of sense with a dashboard sort of update that when we got the talking points is a good idea. But I don't know how so many committees there are yet, so I'll abstain on vote on that. But
So
probably.
far, just the one.
Oh, okay.
So far.
Hey, so flipping back to an early discussion on the strategic plan, BD is mentioned there. Can we hope that the consultant would come up with some good ideas here? Is that, this is a specific strategic need, isn't it?
Yeah, the opportunity areas that I see at BD now that I've been sitting in the general manager's seat for a couple of months, we close our doors to the public at 9 p.m. Monday through Friday and 6 p.m. on weekends, but it doesn't mean that we can't operate after. And I say that because we have so many rental groups requesting to use our space, including teams, swim teams that are cutting us a check for $15,000 to use our pool at the most unopportune times. Why not potentially expand our opportunity after 6 p.m. on weekends to some of those groups? So I think that there is a necessary inclusion of the BD Center in the plan. Again, like if we look at the neighboring towns and communities and their needs, I can't fill the need for rental space that we're currently receiving requests for because we don't want to displace members. We are a membership-based facility first. So I have a couple exciting little areas and things that I would like to explore with a consultant if we all think it should be included.
Sure.
To just make sure the language opens that opportunity, which it sounds like you and Paul have already covered that. Harlan, sorry, called you up, called you back. If you have thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 Woods End, Special Revenue Fund. That's an option that this could be transformed into with the vote of town meeting. It would transform it I know the PEG Access is considered an enterprise fund, but it's actually a special revenue fund, and I happen to be chair of that. We pay $2,800 in transfers. You're paying how many hundreds of thousands of dollars? Okay, that's an option. And it's probably a step before you rely purely on general tax revenues, which ultimately will happen unless you find some other solutions. Or you could sell the BD. That's abruptly what it comes down to. And yet you're going to have a lot of people who do not want to lose that BD center. So they'd be willing to pay part of their general property taxes, but consider transforming the enterprise fund into a special revenue account. Think about the impact on the town's budget, if there is any. That's a finance department question. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Colin, for your thoughts. So what I'd like to do now is make a motion to form a subcommittee to focus on the, we'll call it the BD 10-year plan. I'm going to make that motion. And do I have a second?
Oh, I second.
Thank you, Paul. We'll do a roll call. Casey Atkins, yes. Jim Howard.
Yes.
Paul Bohm.
Yes.
Okay, we have it. I would like to include Pete in the conversation when we talk about who should be on the subcommittee. And initially, I am very inclined to be on it. BD Center is near and dear to my heart and my family. But if there are others who have specialty background, that's basically looking at Paul and Phil and Jim too. I think we should have that conversation when we have Pete in the room and when Phil has been formally brought on to the commission.
So let's
And
add that to the June agenda.
Yes,
New subcommission. Adam will do some sort of line or subcommittee, and we'll have a discussion and vote on who's going to be on that at the June meeting.
And Mary, I would love to have you and Amrith. Amrith is our finance, or he was our finance. I don't know if
He is.
finance committee has
He has.
Okay. Great. If we'd love to have you and Amrith be part of these conversations, because that's where it's going anyway, frankly.
Yep.
So stay tuned, and we will be populating that subcommittee and planning out once July comes.
Happy to help. Happy to help.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hunt Recreation Center.
All right, so I did send out the compulsory information earlier this afternoon, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of big things that are happening. Obviously, because my brain is all over the place, as Anna said, helping to kind of oversee the aquatics department at BD. So the biggest things this weekend coming up, we have our Stowe Street block party, which will be right at our Emerson property. We're expecting a really big turnout. The weather's looking pretty good, so hopefully we'll have a lot of people there. Outside of that, we are kind of this is kind of a transition couple weeks, so we're transitioning out of school year programming and into our summer programming. So we're getting ready for our summer camp. We started opening our outdoor Emerson Pool last week. White Pond is on its way to being 100% ready to go. We had a delay a little bit due to construction. The goal was to Memorial Day weekend open on weekends, but because of the construction not being done, we are opening on June 20th. So yeah, just kind of getting ready for that, and just kind of like most other businesses, staffing shortages have kind of made our hiring staff challenging. Even from my seat of hiring lifeguards, it's been really challenging to find certified quality staff, and I know that Emily, our camp director, is struggling as well, finding high quality camp staff as well. Those are kind of the big highlights outside of the stuff that I sent earlier with information there. So I don't know, Anna, if you want anything else.
No, I think the recreation team that we have is unlike any team I've ever worked for, and everybody really takes the bull by the horns and is charging forward, even amongst the staffing shortage, like Adam mentioned. So summer camp is looking really, really, really good, all things considered. I do want to point out, because I did have an email from a community member today asking, and I'm realizing that we haven't been clear on it. So Picnic in the Park is back this summer for the 4th of July. We don't oversee that program, but we used to, in collaboration with Picnic in the Park, run the Minuteman 5K. And we're not doing that anymore. It was a loved event, but quite honestly, our department works so many hours, nights, weekends, and holidays that they needed one off. And so I made the decision to not have them all come in on the 4th of July anymore to run that road race. So communicate that to anybody that asks. We know it was a beloved event. It hadn't run for the last 2 years because of COVID. So we are just taking that one off the table. But Picnic in the Park will continue. So there will be a community event on the 4th of July.
Hey, Adam, I have a question on White Pond. I don't know what's going on with the town funding of the so the proactive algal bloom avoidance. What is there a system on call to make sure White Pond stays open? Are we at that stage where we're kind of have a rapid response activity? I know that the town was going to fund the mitigation activity.
From my understanding, Anna might need to support me on this one, but I know that the Board of Health is very actively involved this year just because of the blue-green algae bloom. So I know that there's a response, blue-green algae response contact. I forgot what I'm blanking on what it's called.
APOD.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that works there. And I don't know specifically outside of, like I said, the stormwater management and other things that are being done through the construction that would help with that. But
Yeah. So
I'm really talking about the APOD. That's the rapid response. The longer term controls are something totally different, related but different.
yeah, so the town has, and Mary knows this well too, the town has supported the APOD program in White Pond. It's currently being utilized. The Board of Health is doing the bi-weekly algae and water quality testing, which looks at a bunch of different things, E. coli, as well as a much larger comprehensive testing program this summer, utilizing White Pond Advisory Committee and other experts in the region to test in different portions of the pond. In the past, we've done beach testing. And so that doesn't help to know, over by St. Cove, what the blooms look like and what the levels are reading, things like that. So the Board of Health, which is now run by Melanie Dineen, she's the new health director. They've come up with a really comprehensive testing program for the summer. The communication plan has also been updated between us and the Board of Health. So we're all on the same page. Just because there's a bloom over by St. Cove doesn't mean that the beach will close, et cetera. The Department of Public Health, as well as various other departments that have roles and responsibilities in the pond, have created a White Pond Watershed webpage. So if you haven't joined that listserv group yet, I encourage you to do so. They will send out information on the biweekly testing so residents can have access to that data. They will post the current level and usability of the pond in a red, yellow, green visual format. So green, levels are good, pond is open, yellow is more of a pet and child warning, and then red is the pond is closed. And when the pond gets closed, it will be for a 2-week time period. And that is when blooms are of very, very toxic levels like they were last summer. So it doesn't matter if it was the beach or Sachem's or another part of the pond. If it's red, the pond is closed and therefore the beach will be closed. So hopefully that answers some of your questions, Paul.
It does. Is White Pond membership, do we know anything about the summer membership? Yeah.
Yep. So I'll kind of jump to that other facilities piece on the agenda now. I was going to speak to, no, this is perfect. So I don't know if any of you have been to White Pond Beach area recently. It's beautiful. The renovations are fantastic. It's really, really a nice upgrade. However, they are behind. So we were supposed to open the beach on Memorial Day weekend. The construction crew is about a month behind, so we are now targeting an opening date of June 20th with inspection at the beach happening the week prior. The rainwater collection systems are finalized. All those larger pieces are done. It's more so that we're waiting on things that are being affected by shipping delays. So some of the materials required to finish the ramps, the pavilion region, the arm rails coming down, the granite steps from the pathways and the switchback, those sorts of things are back ordered, which is directly affecting the ability to finish the paving and some things like that. So I meet every Thursday morning at White Pond with facilities, the health department and other groups to talk with the consultants and look at the project progression. And as of last week, we were shooting for the week of the 13th for inspection. So membership is aware. We did have some feedback, of course, about how disappointing that is. And we recognize that. We are really hopeful that the consultant will stay on target to open. If they don't for some reason, then we will implement plans to welcome membership to the BD Center, as well as Emerson Pool, which will open soon. So just like last year, we did have a good foundation in place that we could build off of if the pond is closed, but we are optimistic that we will open. Right now, there is no blooms, so the water is safe and clear and beautiful. Until further notice, we are expecting to open 7 days a week on June 20th. And we have close to 500 memberships this year so far. I think, we usually have 600-ish, 620. So I think the effects of last summer and people spending the money and then not getting to actually use the pond certainly hesitated, for people buying again this year, but still a really healthy number. Lots of members returning, some new members, so all is well on that front.
So what's the relationship between, you say you have the White Pond membership and then you have the triple play program, and that's still, and then you have, I'll call sort of backup. If White Pond closes, you offer, are those all interrelated or?
Yeah, so we recognize that, the BD Center and the team at the BD Center oversees more than what's within the walls at 498 Walden Street. They support White Pond in swimming lessons at that aquatics facility. They support Emerson Pool and swimming lessons and programming at that facility. So the triple play allows people to access all of Concord Recreation's aquatics facilities. So I don't even remember how much it costs, but one membership for the triple play gets you to all 3 facilities for the summer. If we learned the hard way the first year with the pond that if the bloom affects our swimming lesson schedule, we displace a lot of people that were looking for swimming lessons at the pond. So we've staggered our lessons this summer to allow us, if the pond is closed for any of our lesson periods, the backup space is the BD Center. So if people truly just want their kids to learn how to swim, we can still do that. It will not be at the pond, it'll be inside at the pool, but we can do that. And our aquatics team, prior to Adam and with Adam, are prepared for that. But we will hope that everybody will swim at their respective sites instead of all coming to the BD Center. But we will not cancel lessons that people are depending on. The other small facility is the Emerson Pool. It's about a 50,000 gallon pool, significantly smaller than the BD Center pools. It provides people with an opportunity to, have that outdoor pool experience, more of like a swim club. That facility will be open on Friday nights, Saturdays, and Sundays. So it's a even more limited membership than the BD Center or White Pond, but again, will fill a niche for somebody that's looking for that sort of aquatics experience. And that's supposed to open, Adam, end of this month sometime?
It's the weekend before so it's the 18th.
Okay.
Then we open the 19th, that Saturday. So,
Yeah.
Or it's the 18th, whatever day that is.
Great. Any other questions on White Pond or aquatics? Everyone? Okay. Just wanted to keep everybody updated as well. So with our discussions in past months with CCYB regarding Ride Out Park, it led us to a conversation regarding the safety of the playground with the proximity of Field 2. And I had mentioned I was reaching out to a consultant who looks at risks associated with field setup and structures. I'm meeting with that consultant this Thursday morning at Rideout Park. We're going to walk the space. He's going to look at field 2. I'll talk about the concerns we, as well as community members, have voiced. And he's going to tell us if he can help us with, a review and evaluation. And if so, what that would cost. Parts of this sort of thing that get tricky, and again, with the strategic plan, is we're not parks. So, it's not necessarily my opinion that the recreation department should foot that sort of bill. I'd want to have a conversation with Public Works. They oversee the fields and the actual facility. So if there was, some consultation that has to be done and potential field moving or updating, they would definitely need to be in the loop, and they've been good team players with us in those conversations. So we'll cross that bridge, but I'm excited to meet with John Amato this Thursday and move forward. So I'll update you in June with how that conversation went.
Hey, Anna, it strikes me it's if he can help us, it's almost a perfect CPC application. That no department should foot that. It's part of recreation, open space, safety. It would fit very well into CPC.
Good point. Thanks, Paul. And then my only other facility update is, again, BD stuff. So we have our annual shutdown week. It's August 22nd this year. We're looking at the current depreciation schedule and deferred maintenance plans and making some big decisions on what we will be doing. We've planned for about $123,000 of capital outlay in FY23. In years past, we haven't spent all that money, and here we are. So again, we have to spend money to stop spending money. So I'm looking to, plan out that August event to do some big things, including sucking out and reinserting the filter medium, the sand, which has never been replaced, and that will be a huge project. So we'll stay tuned on those big projects, but we'll be excited to report back at the end of August with what got done and again, steps forward. So just wanted to make everybody aware of that week if people are asking. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Anna. We're coming up on 8:30 and our reports from liaisons. Mary, you're top of the list with select board.
Gosh, I guess I'll just repeat what I said earlier about the news about the BD Center. Thank you. Really, it's so encouraging, because all I've seen when I looked at the numbers, back to 2017 the other day when I had some time, and it didn't look good. And it's just great news to see it going in the right direction. So thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to mention to this committee is I'm also the liaison to the White Pond Advisory Committee. And I would like, and as I mentioned earlier, that I'm learning that there are a lot of stovepipes within Concord. And one of the things I would really like to do is to get the White Pond Advisory Committee aware of some of your concerns that what you've got going on as far as keeping White Pond open with their concerns. Because I know they've asked about keeping the gate closed, and I thought you gave some really good reasons why it should continue to be locked. But so I'm hoping that I can open up some communication between the White Pond Advisory Committee and this commission, so that we have a mutual understanding instead of a little. Right now, it's not the healthiest relationship.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we can make it better. And so I'll take it slowly. I just wanted to let you know that that's one of my liaison assignments as well. So thank you. I have great committee. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Sorry, I'm negotiating bedtime with a child on the side here.
Oh.
Amrit would be our next. And so this is Sam, who is a big fan of recreation programs.
Hey, Sam.
Next up, we have Paul with CPC. If you want to add anything to the previous update.
No, we finished the cycle. We're getting into the next cycle. First informational meeting is on June 21st, I think it is, and we have another in August. I think the last cycle we got the strategic plan funded. Yeah, the way recreation is counted. So some of the projects like Assabet Bluff and other ones have a recreational piece to it. So out of the $2 million, which was dedicated to the projects, I think maybe a third of that is counted as recreation. But as far as departmental projects, that's a small part of that. So my soapbox is that I think the department and maybe the commission should think about ideas for CPC projects that support, our mission here. In the past, we've been very successful with Emerson Field and other projects. I don't know what you have in mind for this next cycle, but I think safety improvements at Rideout would be a great project. And there are probably other ones as well for some of the fields. So, and I think the commission, we ought to put on our little thinking caps also as citizens and recreation commission members, what projects that we could recommend to Anna.
Yeah, I'd love for that. Adam and I have been creating a calendar for the year, and talking about CPC before the applications are due is certainly one of those things. So I'd love to have that on the June and July agendas, just ideas. Some things I'm already thinking about is all the courts need resurfacing, tennis and basketball, and Emerson and Rideout. And that's a significant project. And those courts also have not been updated in a dozen years, and they're supposed to be updated like every 5 to 6. So would love to hear people's thoughts if you want to start thinking about that and bring it back to the next meeting so we can get a good jump start on those applications this year. That would be great.
Sounds like a great plan, Anna. Paul, do you have a thought there?
No, I think it should be on the agenda. So we've just revised. So I'm your liaison to the CPC, obviously. I think we've just updated so the plan which describes everything and what CPC funds. I'll circulate that to you guys again.
That'd be
so
great.
You can just see what types of projects and historically, so we can kind of think about what ideas we have going forward.
If you could send the timeline to Paul, if that's publicly available, that would be helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, we have public input next up on our agenda. Go ahead, Carlin.
Carlin Reed, 83 would send, it's actually a question for Phil. Phil, I'm glad you moved to Concord. Why did you choose Concord?
Why did I choose Concord? We, like many people, we were living 5 years ago in Cambridge, Somerville, and had a child who is now 5 years old. And in between that time, we had moved out to upstate New York and found that the lifestyle of living in a community where we could walk to a park, walk to a village center, walk to a school with a wealth of open space and recreation resources nearby. Literally, my backyard is on West Concord Park. I believe that's the right name for it, West Concord Park. It was that mix of outdoor activity and recreation space with a dense livable community. It was very attractive to us. What brought us back here was my wife's professional opportunity. Her firm is headquartered in Burlington, so it's what would be an easy commute for her if she was ever going into the office, which may start again sometime soon, and access by a commuter rail down to North Station is a very attractive opportunity for getting into the city. It's a wonderful community that sort of has all of those benefits of a small town community feel, accessible walk, recreational facilities, and access to the city in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't grow up around here, but most of my adult life has been in Metro Boston, in Cambridge, Somerville, in the city. But I've always loved Concord as a place to visit, come out here all the time. But I will admit I had never spent a day in West Concord until we started looking for a home, which is where we live now. And it's got that great balance that we were looking for. So it's a wonderful place, and we couldn't be happier.
Wow,
Great,
it's a good thing this meeting's recorded, so we can actually play that to the Chamber of Commerce.
And he
Use that
kicked
for a
ass.
marketing piece.
Also part of your oversight at one point.
Awesome.
So as we go to look at our next meeting, I have a thought. So Anna, we typically skip the August meeting. Is that correct?
I always get it wrong, but
It's usually August, not
I think
July.
it's August. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why having the calendar we're making is August is off.
Okay. Yes, then it's August.
I have a proposal. So if we do, and early July is going to be tough because it goes right into the 4th of July. If we're able to do the second week in July, and we'll find the first Tuesday, the second week of July, or perhaps I don't know if that works for people, because that date, the 4th of July is on a Monday. Would the Tuesday following be too tight, or shall we look towards the 12th? Maybe the 12th would be the best for July.
What about June? Are we skipping? You want to skip June?
Sorry, we should do June. I'm thinking we're already in June. I think that's part of my confusion. So maybe the 28th of June.
Yeah, the last Tuesday of June is the 28th.
Okay.
Is that the regular schedule, the last Tuesday of the month?
Typically, yes. Unless that doesn't work for people anymore, we can always change it. It's not set in stone.
That's good for me.
Works for me.
The June meeting is fine for me, assuming I'm in. The July one, at the end of the month would be a problem. I'm away that week of July.
So what if we find a week in July, and if instead of having a regular business meeting, or perhaps we could have a regular business meeting, but do it during the day at either Rideout Pavilion. I mean, maybe it's too hot. I'm just thinking of an opportunity to either take that meeting to visit some of our, Ripley, ride out a couple of our spots, or to do the meeting in person at one of those spots outdoors. Maybe that's too ambitious, and I'm happy to heed to that, but just a thought.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
July may be, I may be on vacation, depending on the date you choose.
Let's find a day that works for everyone's schedule, and we don't have to adhere to the last Tuesday for July, because that's a big vacation month. And Jim, what do you think? Where would you want to meet?
I mean, I would prefer Rideout just because it's the closest, but I can go, any of the spaces work for me.
I think it's a great idea, Casey. And it's certainly getting out and seeing the places. There's no substitute. So I think it's a great idea.
White Pond will be open. The beach doesn't open to the public until 10 a.m. So that's an option if you haven't seen the beach or the renovations. That'd be a nice morning coffee meeting location.
I love the idea of White Pond for this season, and then maybe our September meeting could be at Rideout. I don't know if during the day works for people, if a carve out, or we could tinker with the time.
How about Giroux? Is that not ready yet? Could we do a walkthrough of that? That might be kind of nice.
It's not ready yet, but it's looking good. It'll be a nice option once it is.
I like where you're thinking, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
And we could take a bike ride across the Route 2 bridge if it's open. Is that going to be in the fall now?
Yeah, November.
Oh, it's November now? Okay,
Yeah.
scratch that.
Turkey trot.
Turkey trot, that's not a bad idea. I could go either way. I kind of love the idea of White's Pond because it will be an agenda item anyway. It will be hot and heavy this summer. And then we do Rideout as sort of that pavilion is so accessible for a good chunk of the year.
Yep. So June 28th, 7 p.m. Zoom. And then July, sorry, did we say a date yet?
We don't have a date. Paul, what works for the first week of July? That 4th through the 8th does not work for me.
Me neither.
Yeah, I mean, the first 3 weeks of the last week in July would work.
And Phil, the
That may
last
be-
week of July does not work for you, is that correct?
No, that's the only week that does work. But you can have a quorum without me.
Yeah, I'm out of town the last week of July and the first week of August.
That
So
week
what
works
about,
for me.
yeah, what about the,
July, and we did an August meeting instead.
August at White Pond?
August at White Pond.
Yeah.
We could do that.
I just can't do the week of the 8th.
Let's
I'm
see.
away the week of the 22nd.
What about the week of the 15th?
Yeah.
It work.
It could
My-
potentially work.
My only issue is I have jury duty on the 15th of August. I don't know if they will deem me not necessary or not wanted on their jury.
Well, let's do this. Why don't we stick with the July date and like the week of the 18th, and Paul, if you're not there, hope that we can get quorum so we can do in person, middle of the beach season. So like Tuesday, the 19th, want to do like an 8 a.m. at White Pond?
Can we do it after 9? Oof.
A camp drop off in the morning, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
It opens to the public at 10, so we certainly can. It's not like it's flooded with hundreds of people right at 10 a.m. So do you want to do 9:30? Would that work for people in the morning? It's like a 9:30 a.m.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
19th of July.
yeah, even like a 9:15, 9:30 works.
Let's do 9:30, July 19th at White Pond.
Hey, Casey, sorry for interrupting. Is this going to be a public meeting?
Yes.
Private meeting?
No, it
Public
has to
meeting?
be a public meeting. It's a public meeting.
Yeah. Okay, just make sure you realize that.
Yes. That's right, because we need to do a hybrid option.
Do we have to do hybrid option? Is that a thing?
Do, I believe.
I don't know enough about it. I could find
No,
it.
you don't. You don't have to do a hybrid if you don't want to. You can do in person so long as it's public, open to the public.
Yep. So would
Yep.
anyone be turned away if it's closed and people wanted to attend the meeting?
I mean, I can always sit at the gate or we can figure something out where somebody can be at the gate saying that it's just a commission meeting right now until the beach opens at 10.
Yeah, and the concept with the park is it's a park. So even if the swimming is closed, the park remains open. So last summer, we still had guards there even when the water was closed to make sure people weren't swimming. So it should always be open. We'll have a designated area where people for the meeting come and can be, and then they can buy a day pass if they want to stay and swim, or they can leave.
Do we need a day pass?
No,
I'm
you
joking.
come on down. You're part of the White Pond Advisory Committee too.
Oh, that's right. I just walk in whenever I want.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with those two meetings, June 28th, 7 p.m. via Zoom, July 19th, 9:30 a.m. at White Pond. And then we will schedule August when we get there.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Great
Okay,
Thank you.
motion to close the meeting. Give me a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
I
Motion carries. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
take care.
Hi,
I'm
Parker.
going to do bedtime duty. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Phil.
Right.